Let me start off by saying I'm making this to try and give the devs some insight on what a new player might feel about the tutorial. I'm basing this off of my old first impressions from years ago, with impressions I've gotten from actual new players, including one player that actually left the game and never played it because the tutorial was too long and uninformative. They actually got bored of the tutorial and quit the game. You start off here in the spawn tube. So far, so good. Basic instructions about basic movements. Okay, this is nothing new to anyone that has played a game where you can move a character with a keyboard. Now, this list here on the right, I don't actually agree that this tutorial will cover these points. Movement, yes, basic movement. It's the same in any and all first-person games, pretty much the last 10 years. Capturing facilities, I would actually argue it doesn't, no. Resupply classes, yeah, sort of. There are things that you could touch on that would be mere seconds, namely attachments and suit slots. Not to mention nanite cost. Using weapons and equipment, no. It never covers the fact that the medic tool is left click to heal and right click to revive. Or that you can deconstruct explosives using the engineer tool. Those two are arguably some of, if not the most important things to mention. Redeploying and spawning? Sort of. I'll get more into that later. Creating and using a vehicle? Sort of. It's not made clear about, i.e. nanite costs. Shields and generators? Again, sort of. The different shield types are never mentioned, and generators are only mentioned as, here's a thing to click E on. That's it. Changing continents? Sort of. You click the terminal and get kicked out of your tutorial. It doesn't really explain anything. Yeah, you kinda said use the globe terminal, but you never actually put any emphasis on different continents other than just saying there's stuff. Getting into action, just flat out no. There's no explanation on how to find fights. None. No mention of tool like heat maps, what the different parts of the minimap actually shows, or even stuff like placing waypoints on the map to help you navigate, which is pretty important when you're new and you mainly rely on actual manual transportation instead of playing the redeploy side of the game. This is just something that takes way too long. There's no practical reason why someone should just stand still and wait for close to 40 seconds for a terminal or a capture point to flip like this. A tutorial is supposed to have a decent flow to it, just get through it with decent information. This completely ruins it and is flat out boring. Flipping this point should take a few seconds at most, and have an explanation playing saying something like chapter timers varies depending on base types. This is again something that just takes too long. I get that there are a decent amount of things that needs to be covered, but having all these done in strict order like this, in separated areas no less, just takes too long. The infantry portion and the vehicle portion of this should honestly be next to each other in the same room, or in an open field. That way you can combine portions where you say press 3 to equip the rocket launcher with the destroy a vehicle portion. Also, you could use different dummies for different things. You can, as an example, have one dummy that only dies to headshots with a sign that explains this. You can have one dummy that has an active overshield, so you can physically notice the difference between a heavy assault and normal infantry. And you can have a max unit there, so people can test different things on the dummies, just like in normal VR. As is, there's just not enough stuff, and it takes too long to run through compared to the amount of things there are to do. The entire vehicle section that follows infantry has no practical reason to be apart from the infantry portion other than because of reasons. Having the vehicles next to infantry, and preferably one of all of the vehicles, would even allow testing of what can actually damage them. That might help prevent what you sometimes see where a new person is just mag dumping on stuff like a galaxy, actually thinking they're helping. And speaking of testing, please try and explain that all the gear is available for testing in this portion of the game, but it needs to be unlocked as you progress once you're in the main portion. The problem is, I'm not even sure if there's a decent way to say this without making people feel, oh, that's bullshit, but it might be worth noting anyway. So, this right here is actually just flat out horseshit. That I'm even allowed to select this as an option and putting me all the way back to the start of the tutorial is, to be blunt, stupid. Just stupid. This is also where the main spawns that I have available here on the list right now, they shouldn't even be on the list. Why would you let someone accidentally spawn on a main continent when they're in the tutorial? Not to mention, this is where you should inform people on how to find a fight. Maybe pause player control, remove the control of the mouse, swap the map view over to a live view of something like Indar, since that's pretty much always the most active, or the current alert continent, and center the map around an active fight. I would propose nothing smaller than a 24 to 48 fight. And explain that some fights require transportation to get there because of the spawn rules. Explain that you can place waypoints on the map. This is important. I mean, for a new player, it's really important to be able to find their bearings. And show them the icon for deployed Sundra that's actually used as a spawn point. And probably more that I'm not covering right now, but again, it shouldn't be too long of a section either. So this happens just out of nowhere. I'm in the middle of shooting shit and it just starts talking about this thrust pad. What thrust pad? There's just tanks here. What's going on? If you're going to assume that there's a waypoint directing people towards what you're talking about, can you please make sure there are actual waypoints in the tutorial? I've seen people, when they're actually streaming the game as a new player and streaming the tutorial, run around wondering what the actual fuck is going on. Because you would, and I would say they would be justified in assuming this, but you would assume that you are right next to whatever the tutorial is talking about, as if you're actually looking at it. I know what it is, but I also have more than 3 years with the game, and I've played through the tutorial several times. The same message repeats when I'm standing next to the thrust pad or the jump pad when I actually get to it. So there's obviously some hidden triggers around here, or it's just on a timer or some other weird thing, and that shouldn't really be there. So this needs to be fixed. So this is another portion of the tutorial where there's no real practical reason for it to be physically apart from where the infantry and the vehicle damage or shooting area should be. For using the jump pad, sure, but a jump pad could also be taken to that area, or it used to be taking you to that area instead of in between them. Maybe even throw you over something like a light bridge and a moat just to show people that they exist and have them in the tutorial. And maybe even have it so that you can actually toggle the light bridge from the side where you'll land. So from what would then be the area where all the vehicle and infantry dummies are. This is yet again something that just takes too long for what it is. And it doesn't really explain anything other than just saying, stuff goes boom, and I can now actually just continue on with my tutorial. That really doesn't mean anything. It doesn't really explain the difference between the shields it can affect. I think this would be a great time to introduce the concept of what shields you can and cannot walk and or shoot through. You could also have an SCU here. Explain that some bases have these, and if they are destroyed, the defenders can no longer spawn from the base's main spawn room. The number of new people I've talked to that didn't know about this is quite frankly shocking. So, first of all, what's up with the text? I can barely read it. The text on the terminal, that is. It's obscured by the terminal itself. Second, this does not teach me how to change contents. This should open up a continent selection menu like the one you actually get if you use these terminals at any other WARPGATE, and give a brief introduction to the different continents. And it shouldn't be something really, really expansive, just a few seconds with some keywords about the different continents. I'm thinking something to the effect of Kultir is where New York reached a strength to learn the basics of combat. Indar is a large coastline turned desert. Amrish is a rocky forested part of the planet, and Esamir is in the freezing regions, while Hassan is a swampy rainforest. Just something simple. Just something to incentivize people to actually look up these things and see what the differences are. Just getting thrown to Kultir without any information other than there are other places, like the obscure text box tells you there are, doesn't do a new player any favors. Especially not if Kultir is empty whenever they spawn into it, because at times Kultir can be pretty empty, and in my particular instance, when I just did this tutorial run, when I spawned, it basically was empty. There was like 20 people on the entire continent. So one might think, okay, so I guess there's no one playing this game then, which would honestly be a justifiable thought. Instead, if you tell them something about the different continents and actually have the menu open, or shown to them that there is a menu, they might think, well, they said these things about these places, I might as well check out what it looks like. Something simple as that might be enough to incentivize people to actually look for the other continents and or people. And although it might be a harsh introduction, it might also even actually get them into a fight. I'm not saying that that would make people stay longer, but at least it would make them experience actual fighting.